Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Mario Pichardo. Welcome to another episode of Methods. I just want to say that I am so happy to be able to be here, to be able to record for you guys, to be able to put a show on. Um, even though we haven't done a billion shows, um, just the ability to be able to kind of distribute something, to be able to give something to you guys that I think you might find useful, that might be helpful, that could um, give you something to look forward to, something that where you can kind of grow, we can grow together. I think is really cool. So I'm very happy to be able to be here. It's definitely one of the things that I look forward to, and just kind of sharing updates with you guys and things like that about how I'm doing in my own journey to kind of turn my life around, because I think that while things can still be difficult, I hit a point in my life where I said, you know what, I'm gonna change things, and I have a habit of saying that, and then I fall back into the way things have always been, which is that I'll do really well for a little while, but then I'll just fall out of it again, where it's just more um, regressions back to the way I used to be. Kind of like how if you're trying to lose weight, you are really good eating salads for like a week, and then the eighth day you're like, oh, I'll just have one little donut, and then you start having one more donut the next day, and then you just kind of stop going to the gym altogether. Um, so I'm trying to get away from that, and so and I think it's kind of beautiful to be able to go through that journey with you guys. I was reading a book on Audible, actually, that I kind of want to talk about. It's a book called Heavy. It's a book that has a lot of positive reviews. So that doesn't necessarily mean you've seen it, but it is a book that's gotten a lot of positive feedback and things like that. A little bit about it. Heavy's about a guy. In the narrative, his name is Key. I saw his real name, but I don't know exactly how to pronounce it fully, like what the proper pronunciation is. But anyway, this man's name is Key in Heavy, and it's a series of memoirs. I mean, Key's really just uh, a guy who's retelling his experiences of living in Jackson, Mississippi. He's a Jackson, Mississippi boy. Uh, he it's interesting because you see it from the perspective of what it's like to be a young black boy growing up, and all the experiences that he goes through. And I have to say, I really appreciated it because of how little um, things that I read that aren't like, hey, this is how you can be more productive. This is how you can get this. This is a biography about the life of Warren Buffett, or I read a lot, or this is a book about Christianity, defense of Christianity, defense. I don't really get into a lot of memoir based things. I go into biographies, but biographies of famous people, not really biographies of people who are really trying to tell you a story or tell you something about their lives. When I was reading this, I kept thinking about how much I wanted to get uh, involved into things like poetry, and get involved into kind of that relatable side of literature that I think is really cool, even if it is nonfiction. I want to get into more fiction, more nonfiction, and things like that, because I think that when you look at yourself as a person, to be able to at least have exposure to the lives of other people, have exposure to some of what we would consider to be the classics, not necessarily just to be well rounded, but just to know what's out there, just for your own sake, not necessarily even just to be able to talk to other people about them, but just kind of getting a different way of seeing things from someone else's perspective. And I feel like I really got that from from reading um this book, Heavy. And it was very interesting. I disagreed with Key for a lot of reasons, and but I really enjoyed his story. I mean, so where do you even begin? I found that, as I'm reading through Key's life, um he, how do you say this? He he grew up poor. He grows up poor as a black child in Jackson, Mississippi. Things are hard. He talks a lot about the experiences that he had, what his family did when they didn't have, when he didn't want to drink water, he'd drink Kool-Aid, or he'd drink, boxed wine, even if there was nothing else to drink. He just gulp it down, and how his grandmother had to work for white people, and the racism that they had to deal with, or that they experienced around them, or that they saw in the news and things like that. And there was a real tense memoir scene where he's talking about, he and his grandmother get pulled over. I think it's his grandmother. I got a little confused with who was who in the story, because I was listening to it in an audio version. So I got a little, my who is a little jumbled up, but essentially what happens is that they get stopped. So I'm just going to say it's his grandma, just for sake of just telling the story. So, they're just driving along, and they're on a highway, just going down the street. They're going to go somewhere, everything's totally, just they're just riding, talk about life and stuff like that. All of a sudden, the cop lights turn on, and then the tension kind of changes. The atmosphere in that car starts to change. They get pulled over. This police officer gets out. They get really tense. He describes his grandmother as like just gripping the steering wheel. Really tense, really tense. And then the officer comes up, pulls on the window, he's like, "Hey, who are you? Can I get your registration?" And this like that. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And the grandmother becomes so defensive, so combative, in that she's trying to defend herself, defend her family, saying that hey, I have a PhD, I'm a student at this university, I've done nothing wrong. And then the officer says, "Well, you switch lanes without signaling." And she's like, No, yes, I did signal, and the only reason I even did that was because you were pulling me over, And so you kind of describes the thing, and how the kid had balled his hands up because he was ready to, he was trying to get ready to defend them against this police officer. And what's interesting is that during this whole exchange, you kind of get to understand the grandmother's character, in that not only is this a tense experience for anybody to go through, but the fact that when she turns back around, she kind of slaps him with the backhand, like against his chest, like this, like, "Hey," like, because you're sitting here, she's like, "Hey, back off, sit down, relax, kid." And that's really saying something, because you're looking at this guy, he's like just a little kid. I think he's like 10 or 12 at this point, and all he's trying to do is just defend his family. So I think it's interesting, just to kind of see the life through the experiences of other people and the perspectives, the things that they draw from those experiences, the things that they're taking away from the things that they've gone through, and the kind of narrative that kind of follows them through that is very, I think, interesting to look at, and very interesting to kind of just review or share. So, I mean, and the rest of the book just follows him as he gets older and older. But wow, I mean, this guy, he goes through so much. And but the things that I kind of disagreed with him on were, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, in that he had a lot of negative experiences growing up. His grandmother certainly did, having to, for example, wash the clothes of white people. And from a very early age, he got instilled with the idea that, white people are going to try to tear you down. You have to work twice as hard just to get half of what the white people get. And Key talks a lot about, and I'm not trying to take that away from him. I mean, everybody has their struggles, and that might very well be true. I'm not going to say he's lying at all. That was his experience. But then later on in the book, especially towards the end, you start hearing about the way that America is described, that this is what America is, that America is this place that just kind of loves to be racist, loves to be, loves to tear some people down for the benefit of a few. He describes it as the culture. He says, "We are America, the country that does this, the place that does this, the kind of people who don't really care for one another. And I couldn't help but focus on, the current narrative of today and wonder how much of this story is kind of influenced by this culture that we have right now. And when I say culture, I want to point something out that's very particular. I don't want to say that this is a problem that society has, because I don't think that it necessarily is. And I don't think that, interestingly enough, that the problem is really as big as we think it is. And what I mean by that is, I don't think that it's really 50% of all of America. And of course, I could be wrong. I haven't looked at the stats, but that 50% of America believes everything that's coming out of the news, the media, these TV shows, and things that are popping up now that are saying, oh, um, intersectionality is really bad right now, that, we need to stand up for queer people and gay people and um, black people, really just anybody who isn't the majority, in the face of something like social justice. Because I think that this book really espouses a lot of those ideas of people needing social justice, and that this is what America is it's just this terrible place. And you know I I want to so it was interesting because it was hard for me to really take in all of what Key was trying to say, because I think there's such a political narrative right now where it was hard for me to really fully engage with his message because of how toxic the conversation is now, where it seems like everything is being politicized to push people to just agree with, say, abortion, and just to agree with that if you're black, that automatically means you're oppressed, and you have to have these ideas that, oh well, the white man did it to me, I need to get, like, say, reparations or something like that for the struggles that my grandparents have gone through, not even myself. And it was a little interesting because he also talks a lot about that, about intersectionality and, the gays and the queers and students that he's had that's like that. And I think about the colleges and how the colleges have kind of become, modern colleges have kind of become breeding grounds for that kind of ideology, that people need safe spaces, they need to be protected. If you're a trans person, then you need X, Y, and Z. And I'm not trying to take anything away from those movements to say that, if you're trans, or that if you're queer, or that if you're, LGBT, if you're a black woman, or that you're, a woman in general, uh, or minority, like I myself am, that you may not be disenfranchised to a degree. What I am saying is that, you know, what I don't like to see is a lot of the same narrative being pushed that says America is this terrible place, because I think that if anybody really sits down and looks at America, what other country is like America in the opportunities that it gives its people, that if they are willing to step up and stand up and take responsibility for their own lives, what they could accomplish. I think it's a lot easier for people to soak up the idea that they're victims, and unfortunately, um, that's a lot of the narrative that I think is being pushed right now. And from Key's experience, while I can see what he's going through and the kind of message that he's trying to share, and I think it's such a good message in that it explains the viewpoint of an individual, something that he's gone through, and it's such a real message. But I frankly think it's going to just be totally lost. I think it is totally lost in the narrative of the day, where this is made into such a political issue. And I just don't at all think that it's genuine. The modern movement, I think it's more for, say, the Democrats to just gain power. To just gain power. And they're just using it as a movement to be able to do things like that and lie about President Trump, and but also to kind of say that these are issues that really require change. You know, when I think about what this country is founded on, it's founded on the idea that people inherently were given a right to a pursuit of happiness and the right to liberty. And to say that we need something like equal opportunity, or not equal opportunity, but equal outcome for everybody. In other words, that we can't have a hierarchy and everybody needs to get the same returns, blows in the face of everything that capitalism generated for the world. In fact, capitalism itself is demonized as a system that only benefits the rich. But it fails. It's very dishonest to say that, because I think that people are leaving out the very fruits of what capitalism produced. It's like we're only going to focus on the negatives there and only going to focus on the positives of something like, say, socialism, where there is virtually no example of a socialist country like America at all, or anything that could work on the scale of America at all, that provides the same level of economic prosperity and growth that America provides. And I mean that very sincerely. I mean, if you look abroad, America's leading the world, even in cases where we're talking about economic opportunity. America's leading the world by far in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and global climate change initiatives. America's leading every other country by far. It's not even close. And so I think it's interesting because socialism is being pushed very hard right now in the United States. And I think that that's very sad, because if you look at even Venezuela is a country right now that's being pushed towards socialism. And look what's happened in Venezuela. Just terrible, terrible, terrible things. People there's a viral video that just went out of people in Venezuela literally going through garbage cans to try to find food. And I think that what's missing is just a very fundamental understanding of economics, and how human nature operates in a socialistic environment. Because if we take, let's say, a company and we give control of this company to, let's say, the government, right? Let's take Joe's clothing shop. Joe's clothing shop, what implies 3 people. It pays them $9 an hour. You know, definitely not a living wage, but you know, one of the popular things that I think socialists, I'm going to just describe Democrats and socialists as the same, because all of these policies coming out of Democratic offices are very much socialistic policy. So let's just take one very popular socialist policy, and that is the idea of the minimum wage increase. So let's say that they're making $9 an hour, right? And it sounds like definitely what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is saying is that she wants to increase the minimum, and Bernie Sanders, that they want to increase the minimum wage to, say, $15 an hour. So if I increase the minimum wage on these 3 people who work at Joe Schmo's clothing shop, right? Well, because I don't have a degree in business, I don't quite understand how much Joe actually makes in profits. And I think this is where the real just lack of knowledge comes in. It's that running a business doesn't automatically mean that you have millions of dollars laying around, or even tens of thousands of extra in profit that you're just kind of pigeonholing away. It's like there's this idea that that's a thing that happens. So, I mean, just to even get into a very basic level of economics, if I have people who are working at $9 an hour and I employ 3 people, and now I'm being told that I have to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, that's a 50% increase in my total cost, which means that I would have to let 2 people, now hold on, $9 an hour, that's 16. If I had to increase that minimum wage to 15, it would it'd virtually double, right? So I'd be paying someone twice as much as I would before. Joe Schmo would have to let at least one person go. In other words, in order for two people, so and that's in the tight end of it too, right? Is so in order for me to be able to hire, to be able to pay people a living wage, I'd have to fire other people. I'd have to, in other words, I'd have to downsize, which means that fewer people would be working. I would become less productive because now I have fewer workers to do the same job. My profit margins, I don't know if people realize this, but profit margins for most businesses are not in the percentage range that they think it is. This is going to impact most small businesses, which means that all you're going to have left are these big corporations who can afford to take these kinds of hits. And not only are they going to lose staff, but they're going to be less productive, which means they're going to produce even less money, which means they're going to be able to hire even fewer people, especially considering that they get some kind of tax increase as well as I mean, it's just like, it's very basic fundamentals of economics. It's just to say that if I increase the how much somebody gets paid, and I think that that's really where the lie comes in here, is that everybody makes it sound like small, like businesses in general don't make oodles and oodles of money, or that they don't understand where the money that a business makes goes. When a business makes money, it doesn't just eat it. It has to do something with that money. And what does it do? Oh, well, it puts it back into the economy. It builds in bigger factories, or buys more inventory, or increases its marketing, which does what? Brings in more money. And it's like saying that, listen, if you're rich, I mean, this is the best way I've heard it described. If you're, because Bernie Sanders said in the news the other day that he wants that Amazon pays nothing in taxes. And because Amazon doesn't pay anything in taxes, that's where they're going to get the money to pay for all these other programs that they want. First off, he's asking for trillions of dollars. Okay, you can't tax Amazon $6 billion and just go around grabbing everybody else's money and thinking that that's going to be able to pay off Medicare. You can't. I mean, the numbers just don't add up. But even besides that, I mean, even if that was something that you could do, right? Even if there was enough money out there, you can just grab everybody's tax money and it'll totally cover everything, and you won't have to add even a penny, which isn't true at all. But it wouldn't add a single penny additionally to the debt, right? Even if that was the case, well, now we have to contend with the fact that, well, what we're really doing, and this is something that I think Senator Warren had brought up before, where she wants to tax businesses' assets, is that they don't, and I heard Dan Bongino explain it, I thought he explained it the best way, was that you have to understand what a business actually does with the things that it owns. But not only that, I mean, listen, you want to take that $6 billion away from Jeff Bezos, but the one thing you don't realize is that it was Jeff Bezos who employed everyone who works at Amazon. And not only that, but the people who work at Amazon, when they get paid, they are being taxed. So to say that Amazon does not bring anything in terms of tax revenue is a complete lie. It's very dishonest thing to say, but it's also completely dishonest to say that, taking a business's assets is going to produce more you can use that to either pay people or increase social programs. But what you don't understand is you're taking away the very tools and the very resources that keep our economy going the way it is now, which means you're producing an even greater chance, because you're going to take away a business's assets. They're going to be bringing in even less money, which means that they're going to be able to employ fewer and fewer people than they would in the future. In other words, we're promoting an artificial business growth or government public spending programs for the sake of doing a job that government just cannot compete with. I mean, you just can't. And you're using money that you're siphoning off from these businesses like a parasite. I mean, it really is parasitic. The government produces almost no social good. And so to say that, that we need more government is to say that is really to say that we need a bigger tapeworm or a bigger ringworm in our bodies. And I mean, it's just simple economics. I mean, I'm not, there's no advanced level stuff here. I mean, it's very simple. Yes, would it be great that everybody could make a living wage? Of course it is. But someone has to pay for that. And if you're not going to go by market rates, then you're going to pay it from the government, which means you're going to cheat the market, or you're going to force the taxes on the people. And then I think that's really the one thing that is probably the biggest lie. And I think it's the most dishonest thing that Democrats are pushing right now. I mean, if you look at Bernie Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez, or you look at anybody right now who's pushing the idea of either the Green New Deal or Medicare for all, the one thing that they're not telling you is how much it's actually going to cost. And it's not going to come out of the businesses' pockets. That I think that's the big lie. Will some of it come out of there? Yes, but most of it, look at any other socialist country, look at Canada, look at Canada's healthcare system, look at Sweden's healthcare system. Who pays for it? We do. And the big dishonesty is how much it's going to cost. Right now, let's say your taxes are about 30%, your taxes are going to double. And I don't think that that's the thing that people realize. Your taxes would literally double. You pay $30% income tax, be ready to pay 60% income tax. You know, and so it's easy to tell people, and it's just so dishonest to tell people that, oh, you're going to be able to get this, or you're going to be able to get that, it'll be great, but they never tell you who's actually going to pay for it. They make it sound like the rich people are going to pay for it. That's not going to happen. It's just not. It's just a lie. But people won't find that out until it's too late. So I think it's sad. I mean, you know, what are you going to do? But anyway, you know, it's just simple economics. It's just simple economics. Anyway, I guess the only reason I even get into that is that when I was listening to Key talk about his experiences, and intersectionality and all these things, I couldn't help but to just think about that narrative that these groups are oppressed and we need to increase. We need to move towards this more socialistic society so that people who are down can get themselves picked up. But they miss the whole point of the Declaration of Independence of the U.S. Constitution. To say that America isn't a great country without looking at what America gives you over so many other countries. America is the only country in the entire world that has the right, that guarantees people the right to say whatever they want to say. In other words, it's the only country in the world where the government can't hold you down because you wanted to disagree with them. It's the only country that allows freedom of dissent. And anybody who lives in America who doesn't understand America's history needs to know that America had a very, very bloody war, multiple very bloody wars, literally to protect that right for the people. And so for people to go around now and say, oh, well, I don't care if the government looks at my stuff, I have nothing to hide, misses the entire point of why this country even existed in the first place. And that's very sad. Because black people had to die, be lynched, be killed, be murdered. There was a civil war around the idea of getting slaves freedom. There was an entire movement around getting women the right to vote. But people are just going to give up these rights because they feel like it makes them feel less safe, or other groups within them feel less safe. And that's sad. I think America has to man up. I mean, really, has to get more masculine and stand up for its rights. Like your right to own a firearm, your right to protect yourself. You know, one of the things that they don't tell you is that the only places where these shootings happen is places where people aren't allowed to own guns. I'll say that again. The shootings happen in all these places where people are not allowed to own guns. You think shooting's going to happen deep in Texas, where everyone around has a 45 or a rifle? Of course not. Why? I mean, it's simple. I mean, if someone's shooting up going to shoot up your store, right? Your Walmart in Texas, and half the people in there have their Glocks. You think they're just going to sit there and hide and let this person kill them? Of course not. So it's just very dishonest. And then this recent thing with the infanticide is very deeply troubling. I don't know how anybody could call themselves a Democrat after these are the same people that fully backed and supported post birth abortions after a baby's born. In other words, they want to kill babies after they're born, even if they're born alive from an abortion, or if the mother simply feels that the baby's mere existence gives her some kind of mental illness or mental trouble. That, ladies and gentlemen, is, I think, the definition of what God talks about when he says that there's no good left in a city. And I think that's exactly why he burned Sodom and Gomorrah to the ground. We're talking about literally murdering live babies who are, after they're born, not even the third trimester, after they are born. That's horrendous. And you look at the Democrats who supported that. That's horrifying. That is literally that is the absence of that's a country that does not believe in God at all. Doesn't believe in any moral line. Oh, it's terrible. But anyway, so I was listening to the audiobook. I thought it was good. Besides these issues with, intersection, I just couldn't separate the narrative from today from that. And reading it, you can definitely tell that it's at least in some ways influenced by the current movement. So you kind of just have to roll your eyes at that. But but that's not to take anything away from Key's story. I think it's a great story, sharing his experience of what it's like to see the world through that lens. But I couldn't help but think just about the media today and what they're pushing, and all these ideas that you're seeing now crop up in movies, like especially Black Panther, where it's pushing that whole idea that we need to break down walls and not build stuff like that is clearly alluding to the president and the president's movements. And I think it's very dishonest to kind of, I don't know, push those kinds of narratives on the people. But there's propaganda for you. So anyway, I started reading another book. It's called Atomic Habits. It's a very good read. It's basically telling you how you can change, not only how to change your habits, but it kind of gives you a guide to what makes the difference between where you are in your life and where you want to be, and how just small little changes now, 2 years from now, 3 months from now, 3 weeks from now, could have a big change in the way that you kind of experience life and your basic life experience, for better or worse. And then that's as simple as doing something like, okay, if I want to start reading more, I'm going to leave a book on top of my pillow as I'm getting ready in the morning, so that's kind of a cue for when I get home, just to sit down and read it before at bedtime or stuff like that. And I just thought it was interesting because it kind of gives you a deeper kind of way to view changes in your life. Because he says that it's a lot more about the environment. We think about it as needing more willpower. But the way it's described in this book is that, really what it is the environment. Someone who's disciplined, it's not that they have more willpower at any given moment. They do, but that's not what it is that allows them to be better. It's about that their life is structured. In other words, their environment supports their aims, or that they don't live in places where temptations are easily accessible, and that is what makes the difference. In other words, they live in environments that support whatever they're trying to bring out in the world. So if they, for example, if I wanted to focus more on studying and less on watching TV, they don't allow themselves to live in environments where the TV is easily accessible. See, so that's a big difference. Here it's not about willpower, it's about removing temptations. If I don't want to eat fast food, that means I don't have any fast food in the house. If I don't want to eat processed foods, that means I don't have any processed foods in the house. If I don't want to watch TV, that means I don't have a TV in the house, or I don't have a TV that's plugged in, or that's easy accessible, or the batteries in the remote, I took them out so that I couldn't get easily persuaded to kind of just do that kind of thing. So it's interesting because looking at things from that angle really kind of changes the way that you think about the world, the way you think about things, and so on and so forth. So to jump into another topic here, I've been thinking about how I kind of wanted to structure my life in that, what's my day-to-day going to be like. And I was very kind of distraught yesterday because, not every day is going to be what you want it to be. I mean, you could want to be a more productive person, but that takes time. That's not something that you just get overnight. You don't just wake up one day and you're productive. It's a very slow process. And, some days you don't even see the result. It could be weeks and weeks and weeks, months, even years before you see your hard work end up paying off for you. And that's something important to pay attention to. But there was a day yesterday where I didn't really I wasn't as productive as I wanted to be. And that really sucked for me. I was very much sitting there and I was like, damn. I was like, I just couldn't get myself to do things. Things weren't working right. Other things went wrong. And so I kind of lost the day. But in retrospect, I didn't. And I'll tell you why, because my resolve, even after the end of that day where nothing got done, I said to myself, well, what can I do with this? What can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And I said, well, I'll make sure that I do it no matter what. I mean, if I have to go, around the world, if I have to go into my car to record, I'll just do that. If I have to record it at midnight, then I'll do that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that when you want to get something done, I had to take self-responsibility, like Nathaniel Branden talks about in his book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. One of those pillars is self-responsibility, which means that, listen, you're the one who's responsible for your situation in life, for your, you're responsible for your health, you're responsible for your sense of happiness, you're responsible for all that stuff. So, I really had to sit here and say, well, if I'm responsible, how can I make sure that the things that I need to get done are going to get done no matter what? And I had to follow that through. So, even when I look at it and say, okay, well, this day was a failure, well, it really wasn't. And the reason it wasn't is because it allowed me to sit there and to find out the things that were wrong, how I could fix it so that it wouldn't happen again. And it kind of strengthens your resolve because it says, well, if I'm responsible for myself in this area, that means I'm also responsible for myself in the others. And then whenever something comes by that may step in my way as an obstacle, I should look for ways around that and not, kind of be passive about it, but be aggressive in that, making sure that, well, the thing that's going to replace it, the thing that I can do, I got to make sure that I do it so that, I'm prepared or that I'm ready. So, I mean, that's just something else that I kind of had went through. And there was one more idea that I wanted to talk about that I also saw that was in Atomic Habits. And that was the idea that, listen, like, when you do something, when you do something and it always has to be the best, like for example, this podcast, I think is very kind of, or a video if you're watching it on YouTube, is very kind of scatterbrained, where it's kind of like, there isn't a set direction. I'm kind of just like talking and talking and talking. Well, I think it's better to have that than have never recorded anything at all because it wasn't good enough to put online, if that makes sense. In other words, the repetitions of me doing this day in and day out, even just to get myself more comfortable with doing it, even if the content is not that good, is more important than to, wait around all day to get that perfect one and just put up one. In other words, it's better to have 35, videos out there where you're progressively getting better than to put out one great one and then have to kind of churn that out over and over again. I mean, it's going to be mediocre on some level because you just don't have the experience. You don't have the of having done it before. You just don't have it. So, I mean, that's something that's definitely an idea that I cling with. I mean, I'd rather have anything out there, because remember, there's always things you're going to be getting better at. And for me, one of those things is kind of learning the structure, just getting used to recording myself on video still. So I kind of want to do it as much as I can, just so that I can get into that easiness with it. There was a time when I used to really do a lot of stuff on Twitch. I used to stream every day. There was a summer where I just did that, and it was nerve wracking at first. Not nerve wracking, but I was nervous. I got anxiety at first, and I remember it took me a couple weeks before I really kind of settled into it a little bit more. And then as time went on, I got more and more relaxed, and that was great. But it kind of, that really taught me something, which is that, you have to kind of do something for a while, or just allow yourself to do something for a while, even though you may think that your quality isn't the best, because over time, I mean, you'll start to build a following, you'll start to build an audience, and you'll start to actually get better. The more that you do it, your confidence will increase, and things will just generally fall into place, as long as you keep doing the things that, as long as you're consistent at it. So yeah, I mean, do I feel good about it? Of course I do, and I think it'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, that has definitely been my experience with it, and I'm very happy about that. So yeah, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you're if you're still listening, I need to get a good solid structure going on here for these episodes, for these podcasts and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel very grateful that you're listening, that you stay there, kind of just paying attention to it. One of the ways that I got myself to sit here and start doing these was, I said, let me just buy the mic that I've always wanted, and use that as a springboard to kind of get me to do things. You see, every time I sit at my desk, I kind of have the mic here. It's easily accessible. It's good for all of my working conditions, so I can kind of just work with it and find the results that I'm looking for in terms of the quality. And so, I said, look, I'm going to make a commitment to myself that if I do buy this, then I'm going to make sure that I do the things that I need to do. So sometimes all you need is a little push, and that doesn't mean you have to buy anything, but to be able to do that, it's just kind of making that commitment and being consistent with it. So if you guys are out there, and you're kind of struggling as well with some areas of your life, one of the things that really helped me was really kind of listening to a lot of different people that I found in books, whose books that I was able to read. And I read as much as I could about these people's lives. And I said, well, let me just follow this person and kind of see what I can learn from them. And just kind of go with that and kind of see where that took me. And, I found a lot of success with that, just in terms of the book knowledge that I was able to find. So, I would definitely push people in that same direction and say, hey, you want to learn something? Listen, there's a resource on everything. We live in this day and age where you can find anything that you want. So, yeah, I mean, it was that simple. I got a haircut finally, because I was like, okay, I can't be looking too crazy. I know my hair's like not if you're watching on YouTube, but I just ignore that. So, yeah, I mean, so I just want to share that with you guys. Just want to make sure that I got a video out there, that I got a podcast out there, that we kept in being consistent with it. Thank you guys for being here along on the journey. I want this to be something where you grow and you can find a sense of meaning, find a sense of purpose, find a sense of growth. So, and I hope that, we can continue to do that together. And if you guys like the video, you guys like the episode, you guys like the podcast, please feel free to like it, subscribe, share it, and do all that fun stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.